Welcome to Batty Diaries. I remember struggling so much to write content on LinkedIn that converted a few years ago. And so today I want to break down essentially what your LinkedIn content strategy needs to be. And this is the result of literally like 3.5 years of me iterating on this. So the first thing I want to start with is really what I struggled around a few years ago. So when I first started my kind of getting active on LinkedIn, I was an entrepreneur. I was testing different business ideas. Hey, thanks for joining on the YouTube Live. If you're on here, I'd love to know who's joining and give me a little hi in the chat. I'd love to hear from you. But basically, when I first got on LinkedIn in 2020, I was an entrepreneur and I was testing different ideas, and I was slowly building up my kind of personal brand on LinkedIn. I'm just gonna close this blind because it's way too bright. And let's just close my closet. All right. So basically, when I first started on LinkedIn, I was just kind of testing different business ideas. And so I was building my personal brand over time. And then at one point, when all my product ideas failed, I was like, I'm just going to kind of freelance write for a bit. And so that's when I actually started kind of like landing a few clients on LinkedIn. But I found that like when I wanted to really consistently bring in clients, I still felt like I was guessing. And one of the things that honestly tripped me up for so long, and I'm like still shocked that some people are kind of like talking about content strategies like this because I personally don't think they work, is like when you put together your content strategy around like your brand pillars or like content pillars or like, the three topics that you want to post on. The reason that I really think that this is not the right approach. Hey, Darren, thanks for joining. Just chatting about content strategy. So the reason that things like content pillars, brand pillars don't really work, in my opinion, is because they don't ensure that you're actually posting the right type of content. So this is really important because it's not just about the topic that you're posting about, but it's also about the types of content. So I'm going to walk you through the 4 types of content that you need to be cycling through on LinkedIn in order to grow, nurture, and convert your audience. So not every single post is going to be a sales post, but there are certain types of posts that you need to post in order to basically nurture your audience, right? And give them the right mix of things. They need to kind of be activated to buy from you. But the reason that these content pillars, and I've used content pillars for years, I was like, okay, I'm going to have this pillar where I'm going to talk about this, then I'm going to have my my profile pillar, I'm going to have my like growth pillar. And it was never, at the end of the day, I always felt like I was guessing. And when a lead came in, I didn't really know why. And so I was like bringing in the clients, but there wasn't a repeatable process. And so I really started drilling down on like, what are the actual types of content that I need to create in the buyer journey for people to get activated. And so this is where I basically kind of like have completely simplified my content strategy. I used to be so freaking complicated, but now it's literally so simple. And this content strategy has like essentially like that's what generated $29,000 in sales in the first 6 months of my business. That's what helped me reach my first 10K month. That's what helps me bring in leads when I need on LinkedIn. And that's also what's just simplified content creation and made it that where I feel actually confident that when I create content, it's going to connect with my audience and it's a little more predictable. And when things are more predictable, that's when also when you can test things, right? Because you're kind of like, I was testing this thing. This is the result. Now let's try to replicate it, as opposed to like, I'm just going to post 5 times a week and hope for the best, right? All right. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into the 4 types of content. So the 4 types of content, I'll just list it off and then I'll walk through each one. Number 1 is hyper specific educational content. And so there's a reason why I call it hyper specific educational content, is because it's not just any educational content, but it's very specific. And so let's just kind of take a step back here. The whole purpose of educational content is for you to educate your audience with the goal of them looking at you as someone who has knowledge that they benefit from and is someone who they want to return to continue consuming more information, or it's like a piece of educational content that actually enables them to deliver a small win that then builds trust, right? And then with that, they'll now hopefully kind of like keep consuming your content. And then with your other pillars, you can hopefully activate them to actually purchase your services. So that's kind of the purpose of educational content. But the reason that we want to make it hyper specific is because when you're really, really specific, that's when you're actually going to stand out. And so there's just way too much educational content out there that's like really vague. It's like how to grow on LinkedIn, or like, how to write a headline. It's like, number one, it's just going to blend into the into the feed, because that's what everyone else is talking about. And so there's not going to be anything that actually differentiates your educational content as opposed to anyone else's educational content. So that's why it's really important to get specific. The second reason it's really important to get hyper specific in your educational content is because the purpose of educational content is for you to educate the very narrow segment of your ideal client. And in order to really do that, you need to hit on a very specific pain point that they have, right? So let's say, for example, I have a really good example for you. So let's say like, a really kind of not very good general educational post I could write is, how to showcase your social proof as a business owner. It's kind of, or like as a business or something like that. It's kind of like very vague. It's like, we don't really know who it speaks to. And like, it's not really going to like help anyone. It's not going to make anyone feel like, oh my gosh, like this is exactly what I need. Because the kind of like thing that I'll mention here is we also want to make sure that we are trying to solve problems that our ideal clients can't easily solve anywhere else. So going back to this example, so the kind of not so great post would be, how to showcase your social proof. It's kind of like, what kind of social proof? Like, who is it for? Like, what kind of situation are you in? So a much better piece of content, which I've been freaking meaning to create forever, is how to make, like, it's basically targeted for someone who needs to showcase social proof, but they don't have a lot of social proof yet because they're still early in their business. So it could be something like, how to, turn one client case study into like 10 social proof posts in the first like month of your business before you have a lot of results or something, or like how to create social proof content when you don't have a lot of client results. So this is like a really specific pain point. This is actually a very specific pain point that my audience has and that I need to actually like get to creating that content. But as you can see, this is going to speak to them so much more closely. And this is why like people will get magnetized to you, because you're giving them something that is very specific to what they need. And also hopefully they can't get it anywhere else, right? So ways to get specific with your educational content is, again, to really drill down on the specific context under which the person is in when they are experiencing this problem, right? Another really great way to create specific educational content is to create it through the lens of your own experience. So it could be something like, like I have a really good performing post that's, how I would start my LinkedIn account from scratch in 2023 as a business owner. So that's like kind of telling through my lens. So it's an educational piece of content, but I'm stepping in as the expert and saying, hey, here's how I would do it. And then I would, of course, insert my authority, like, hey, I'm a LinkedIn expert. I did this, this is why you should listen to me. But essentially the hook is a lot more specific, right? Other ways to get super specific with educational content is to just speak directly directly to the person you're speaking to by addressing them, not just by title, but kind of like the experience that they're having in their life, right? All right, so that's specific educational content. And that is the first type of content that you need to post on LinkedIn. So if this is landing for you, drop an emoji in the chat, or if you have any questions, drop them in. I'm super happy to answer them. But yeah, number one, specific educational content. All right. So second piece of content is problem-aware content. So this is one style of content that I personally used to struggle with so much because I didn't really understand what it was. I was like, what do you mean problem-aware content? And so there's a Darren's giving thumbs up there. So the way that some people call problemware content, which personally resonates really well with me, is calling it agitation content. And so this is actually the type of content that I see like a lot of business owners missing. And this is really what's going to activate your audience. So, what problemware content is you're basically showing your audience what is their problem, what they're doing wrong, why it's wrong, and really kind of like highlighting the gap of like where they want to be and the things they need to be doing to get there versus where they are right now and the incorrect things that they're doing right now. So really kind of showing that gap, right? And this is where the agitation comes in because you're showing them like, hey, you want to be here, but you're here because you're doing these things, but you need to be doing these things, and then you're going to get here. That's like a very like agitating experience, right? You're just like, oh my gosh, like I want that. And now it's like, it's almost like agitating you because it's reminding you, hey, you're not there yet. But not in like a shaming way. So I've been watching a lot of TikTok videos recently that are talking about like a recent shift in problemware content where basically we're moving away from like really like aggressive in your face problemware content where it's just kind of like, you're doing this wrong. Like, how could you? And like, you don't know anything. And just people don't want to be spoken to like that. And like, I have created content like that before just because I didn't know. Again, problemware content is really hard. And sometimes like it can be easy to get a little too kind of intense with it, especially because we're trying to agitate them, right? But this is where we really need to also empathize with them. So whenever we're showing them like, hey, this is what you're doing wrong, I like to usually tell my audience, like, this is probably why you're doing this, or like, it's not your fault. It's probably because you were told this. It's probably because you experienced this. So it's really that empathy. So we're not like picking them and being like, oh, hey, like you made a big mistake there. And that's really embarrassing. It's more just like, oh, like you want to get to this place, but like right now you're kind of just like, struggling, like you're motivated, but like, these things are kind of annoying. Here's how you can go there. So it's more of like a serving type of experience, right? And so like a really simple example could be, like mistakes that you're making, or it could be like, are you doing X because you think it's going to Y? Well, actually, it's not, or like something like that. So it's basically a lot of belief shifting as well. This is a really important piece of your content strategy, is where you're really going to change their perspective about what it is that they need to do. Problemware content is also a type of content that you can sell from. So educational content, I personally don't really sell from there a lot just because the goal is really to like build trust, give the win, get them to come back. But with the rest of the types of content, you can actually sell from there. So problemware content is a great piece of content to put a sales call to action at the end of your post. All right, so that's specific educational content and then problemware content. Okay, so going into the third category, which is authority building content. So I really, really like this type of content. And I actually just really love the way that I've put together this content strategy. Because like I used to have like 5 or 6 or more different types of content. Honestly, like I just consolidated it all just to make it like super freaking simple. And so under authority building content is actually quite a few different types of content. So one really simple example is like social proof, client results, client wins, client stories, stuff like that, where you're showcasing your client work. You're literally showing what you have done for your clients. That's a type of authority building content. Obviously, it builds authority. But there's other types of authority building content. One other type of authority building content could be your own wins, right? It could be hey, Emma, thanks for joining. This was actually a bit of a topic requested from you, how to create content that grabs your ideal client's attention. So super excited to have you here. But basically, so with authority building content, it can either be your client results, or another really nice one, especially if you're not like swimming in social proof yet, is your own authority, right? Results that you've driven for yourself, right? That's, for example, when I talk about my own wins in my business. It could be maybe you're marketing like your knowledge, right? Like maybe if you don't have necessarily, hey, if you don't necessarily have like, you know, some crazy results you've driven for yourself, it could just be that you have like a lot of knowledge about something. Like maybe you worked in a certain space, or maybe you mentored or something like that, right? Another piece of authority building content could be like showcasing how your process is different. So this is where like you're really stepping into like positioning yourself specifically in the market. So this is where, for example, like I talk about how I work with how I do LinkedIn is different from most people, right? For example, for me, like I really inject the human element because like time and time again, I find that when my clients show their personality on LinkedIn, everything just starts working better because people want to buy from people, right? So I talk a lot about that in my content, and I also weave in the wins, right? So I might talk about like, the reason my clients usually land their first high paying client on LinkedIn within the first month is because I actually tell them, I get them to showcase their personality. Like we actually bring out who they are on their profile, which then helps them act like a human on LinkedIn and like organically bring in clients, right? That's going to like uniquely position me as a certain type of expert, right? Like, and it builds the authority with my audience, right? Another example, so this is kind of a bit of a different type of authority building content. This is where like I really like to play around is it could be something where you are sharing um, a very controversial opinion. So this is where leaders and authority are people who will stand up for what they believe in, and people want to buy from people who stand up for what they believe in and their values. And so if you can create a controversial post under the authority type of content that talks about like, a really strong belief that you have and what you stand for, that's going to position you as an authority. So I'll give you like a really simple example from like yesterday, just because it's super, I need to hop off for a call. Definitely be watching. Yes, of course. Happy that you jumped in. Yeah, it'll be on the feed, so you can of course watch it whenever you need. But basically, so yesterday I did a post super impromptu. I just decided to talk about how like I don't think it's okay for people to be using ChatGPT to comment on LinkedIn. And so it's not like a traditional authority building post in terms of like, oh, my clients got this, but I'm standing up for something that I believe in and I'm sharing my voice and I'm being a little bit kind of like controversial about it, right? That's going to show people that, you're not afraid to speak your mind and you're not afraid to stand up for what you believe in. And that's what truly a leader is and an authority, right? So a little bit of a different concept of authority building content, but still very much authority building content. All right, so far we have specific educational content, we have problem aware content, and then we have authority building content. And then the fourth and final category is storytelling content. So this is where basically you are telling stories, and the goal here is to create an emotional connection with your audience. But where most people go wrong, I find, is they just kind of tell random stories. So, but the thing is, you need to really think about what are the stories that I need to tell that are going to show my ideal client that I understand them and that like I'm relatable to them, right? So these could be stories about like similar struggles that you had that your ideal client is going through and how you overcame them. Not like a random story, but like a really paralleled story to their experience, right? So for example, for me, like a lot of my audience is really scared of, their old bosses, for example, commenting on their LinkedIn posts or, connecting with them or like watching them promote their business. And they have a really big fear of that, right? And so I might tell a story about like, hey, I used to be really scared. And like when I first got on LinkedIn in February 2020, it's like I was a brand new entrepreneur. I had like no job title because I just quit my job. I wasn't even really an entrepreneur because I hadn't tested anything yet. I had so much imposter syndrome and I knew people were actually judging me. But I knew that like LinkedIn was going to be good for my visibility as a professional person, whether it's an entrepreneur, if I go back to corporate in the end. And so I might tell a story about like, hey, like here are some of the things that helped me continue showing up, even though I'm scared. So again, like I'm telling a story of an experience that I had that is the same to the experience that my ideal client is feeling right now, right? They're feeling apprehensive. They don't want to get on there. But if I can tell a story of like, hey, I was exactly where you were, totally get it. It was really freaking hard. But here are the things that I did to kind of like get through it, right? That's going to inspire them. That's going to show them that you understand them. It's going to build relatability and it's going to help them see that it's possible for them, right? So you can see how this is activating, right? Because they're now thinking like, oh, because you're almost like combating an objection as well, right? That's what you can also do with like storytelling content, with authority building content. Hey, someone joined on the YouTube live. Drop a comment in there. I'd love to know. I'd love to know who's joining. We're just chatting about what types of content to post on LinkedIn. But yeah, so with storytelling content, yeah, you could combat an objection with a story. Like there's so many different ways to do it. And then the thing that I forgot to mention for both the authority building content and the storytelling content is those are also pieces of content in which you can sell. Which means you put like a sales call to action at the end of your post or the carousel or like whatever it is. But those are really the three types of content in which you could like attach a sales call to action. You could do it for educational content too. But I've personally found it work best with problem aware, authority building, and storytelling content. So those are kind of like the four categories of content that I create personally for my business and that I get all my clients to create in order to grow, nurture, and convert their audience. So, with that being said, it's not that, again, it's not that every single post is going to bring in a lead. And so, I just want to kind of clarify something here. There are going to be a lot of pieces of content that you post that aren't going to be the pieces of content that bring in the inbound lead because there's a lot of touch points that need to happen in order for your audience to buy from you. And usually if you ask someone, hey, like what made you want to buy from me? Like what are the pieces of content that you consume? They're going to consume a lot. Like they're going to binge your content, right? But there's going to be certain posts that are probably going to actually like prompt someone to reach out to you, right? But there will be a lot of posts that you are just nurturing your audience with, right? So don't expect like the you know, like a sales post on LinkedIn or like these types of posts, like they're not a failure if you don't bring in an inbound lead because they could be nurturing still your audience, right? So this is where like I personally, whenever anyone asks to work with me, I do a deep dive on like what it is that actually attracted them to work with me. That then helps me understand what content resonated with them and actually activated them to want to work with me. So those are the four types of content. This is the exact framework that I'm going to be using in my content membership that is launching at the end of this month, which I am so excited about because a lot of my audience has been asking for that a lot. So I'm going to be basically giving you, it's going to be a monthly membership, and I'm going to be giving you a piece like 12 to 15 LinkedIn post templates. So not just content prompts or hooks. So this is where it really gets different because I feel like a lot of people, when they help you with LinkedIn content, they're like, oh, here's like, 20 content ideas, or here's like, here's like a hook or something like that, or like here's like one of my posts in a detailed structure, but like 50 other just vague content prompts. And so what I did when I ran the last version of the LinkedIn Baddie program is I actually created LinkedIn post templates for a lot of the women, where basically it's not like, it's kind of like between a content prompt and a fill in the gap situation, but it's not like fill in the gaps of like I give you the exact words. Like some of the hooks might have them, but it really, I want to encourage you to still write the post yourself, but it really shows you kind of what sections to have in the post and what to write in each almost like line and paragraph, and how to make it flow down to the sales call to action for the ones that have a sales post, right? So this has been honestly a game changer for one of my clients who's a busy mom and a busy business owner. And these templates have actually saved her from just like overthinking her content and actually being able to show up, but also know that she's posting content that is actually going to like grow and convert her audience, right? Not just like guessing in her content. But yeah, so I'm super excited for the membership. This is perfect for you if you're a service provider on LinkedIn and you just want to get consistent with your content. You just want to know what type of content you need to post in order to nurture and convert your audience, in order to get engagement from the right types of clients on LinkedIn. Create content that really grabs their attention and gets them to want to talk to you. This membership is honestly perfect for you. It's super affordable. I'm going to be dropping more information over the next few weeks. But if you're interested to hear more, send me a DM on Instagram or LinkedIn or whatever, and I'll be happy to share some of the early deets with you. But yeah, this is gonna be an awesome membership that honestly I don't think you'll be able to find anywhere else. So with that being said, the last thing I actually have for you is I mentioned in the last live that I put together a new free resource. It is a set of 3 case studies of 3 wonderful service providers who I've worked with to help them land high-paying clients on LinkedIn. I'm going to drop the link below for you to grab the freebie. It's like 3 little case studies. It shows you kind of what we did to get the results, show you screenshots of the profile, stuff like that, so you can see what they look like. So yeah, grab the free resource. I definitely recommend checking it out. And yeah, next week we'll be back with a fun topic that will once again be related to content. All right. So if you enjoyed this live, please let me know. I love hearing from you guys. I love the feedback. I love hearing what landed. So send me a message on Instagram, send me a message on LinkedIn, wherever. Comment on this live stream if you're watching it after. Let me know what resonated. And more importantly, let me know what you want to hear more of. Okay. All right. Have a good rest of your week. I'll see you soon, baddies.